모두 유죄된 바다 제 모든 바보는 대저 유죄 이쪽으로 가서 답반도 찾아वे 주 기회는 돌아서 저는 저도는 저저 저저 저로 또로로도 바빠도라고 되고 정하다 봐야는 그들로야 상사로 또저저저로 바빠도 되고 Mahamudra Bajava Rong, Bajiloma Navago, one day, oh, Mitchell, your Poland, the Panjaka Young one, thank you, the Lami Java, so don't much of that cooking chain, your former boy to Vajilla. The Jeto Venture the Dachino, about shooting the God, so the land, rich road Pangela, somebody thinking. 삼바는 hingi, 삼바가 제비 hingi지. 기계들 삼바, 기계들 삼바지. 삼바 세미가 뭔지. 이 삼바가 제비 hingi시바지. 그래서 제가 삼hin기지. 이거는 인피지 주토 맞게 나스. 인피가 주토 주세 봐야더니 무슨 그사한 양선이도 까지는 이나도 봐 내리. 이나도 봐도 첫 노들은 난 유무가 독이고 차리요리. 그리 서사로 사실 깔미는 상hin기를 하기로 오늘 약간 랑기가 파시 쪽 랑기가 창고요. 명목받고 이보에 파시 쪽이야. 옛날에 파시 쪽들이 야세랑이 소비는 나서 속마니 대다워도 줄을 찌나 근데 취직돼서 강제장 나는 이기면 자주 제장하는데 파시는 하나 로요 줄을 사족세구나. 그래서 말하리 배송 적당 파티도 레지도 싫어 막 보이지 이래요. 말하리 배송 강리지 세체 초지 바로는 탑기서 로는 메스 오 무슨 초사시 봐도 감사 버리지 사juk 삼식이 초사하고 요래 누가 장시 봐도 파전에 나디리 지금 삼식이라 주려면 사juk 때문에 도마대 쉬는 기발하는 셈이 삼식이 맞잖아. 이 콕되면서다 이 콕은 이봐 쳐버려가 유무바 쪽으로 탑쪽 빠지더니 유무바 탑쪽 받대 먹대 이 콕은 이봐 요거요래 이 저상폭로 저상거더니 나한테 또 말까지 차바바바는 지더니 요거요래 오늘 사족 처부 도마한테 톱잖아 이 콕되는 수남 뒤체면 바바고요 사하다도 지나 사족생랑이 줄래우나 사지에 삼지 후바야 대리사과네 sep지에 르교는 대리사과요 말했어 대리가 상대지 랑그 사람이랑 대리사과요 말했어 대상대 가래 너는 주 상hin기에 오늘 sep지에 삼지에다가 쇼고 숨고 강의용 나타 낭배 폐가 요래서 소마 탐지가 제일 먼저 어떻게 주된 낭배에 쇼를 폐인 거를 가리 폐인다 그래. 쇼 통거를 왜? 쇼 통이 요절에 빼나 따로받아 몰라리 받대 삼지에는 통거 요리지. 나서 따로는 통거 매 내바시 올라. 통거 매대 그 피부에 말이 피고 피부에 이치요 부터 되기요. 가리 이치요. 야. 저도 삼hin지가 용띠 있나? 몇 피지 때와 아메리카라 딱 대인인데 대니 피지 삼hin지 싸워 때와 그래봐오나? 뭐지 sem을 가와 토고요라. 내가 토고요라. 따와 강리. 핀시니가 그다 매바게 핀시니가 지 쟁거요라. 대신이가 그게 다 될 자루는 뜻이 서로 대화요리. 대리 셔성이 남시대 나한테 맞아 맞아. 바시 이지숙진 찾기요리 맞도 다디들 자선 코지를 될 찍는 분 자롱도 왜 자롱 교수는 쳐와대 산행이 그 페인이 찍당죠 말이야. 별로 형호 담지는 또다 잡아삼지게 파쇼로 잡아다는 행적인 공항번호 적기는 망부 요리 강도 팽거를 째와적이 팽거를 야 째와적이 강리 저 사람도 재미지고는 야, 이전이 니바 쓴 거고는 다 팽이요, 찌라. 니바 쭉 강게, 랑게 타만이 새끼 탐지를 피고 선로 이게 세미 바지 세미 바지 뭐 가리 소증을 내가 말해 사만 상이죠 사만 피고 새끼 탐지를 피고 선로 요는 제 세미 바래 제 나도 사람 또 없지 대기 집어 또 없지나 주성제 사지에 삼식이 샘 대리 상인지를 피고서는 상인지 했더니 낙하다고 쳐야 돼요. 낙하다고 쳐서 쭉쭉 가야지. 걔네들 상인지 빼주고 걔네들 빼주고 그러라. 오늘 걔네들 낙하다고 쳐서 쭉쭉 갈 때는 걔네들 속대가 잡대요, 샘대가 잡대요. 대 잡아도 서서 줘보고 와. 땅에 땅은 양듯이 이러와. 담보 파만이지. 들이 돕고, 들이 도모니지. 들이 기기니, 들이 작업을 샘대 장보거리. 들이 무서 샘보고 다 들이 문에다 남자 다 족저 받자다 봐. 사지 동지들이 정말이지. 문에 남게 갖다 생기기 참. 능임이 찍다고 말이야. 생겨 내려오고 만풍 삼아도 내려야지. 생겨 내려오고 통에 능이 찍다고 말이야. 그러나 찍찍찍. 능이 다 촉구요. 양들이 인사비가 확 보여래. 생포는 같이 니와 우리 능이 매가래. 능이 매배 내가 다 봐야 요래. 뒤설나 나디들 상인기 쇼를 지나 배기고래. 소모를 지나 배기고래. 야, 이 필다 빼는다 다른 있으면 말라리 봐. 락셀을 다 돌아. 가와게 삼담소래. 야, 이 로마서 이게 다 말라리 봐. 시성지. 이 소펄, 쌍펄, 다 코티들이 주바펄에, 주바펄 쓰는들이 말라리 봐. 락셀을 강을 꼭 마셔야 돼. 삼산을 꼭 가로에 속한 게 요래. 삼산을 꼭 한 게 그냥 롱줄리식 요래. 롱줄리식 요래. 삼산들이 가라야 싸움하고 고토 고자도 이만 로마상전 최영지. 대 가리는 뒷값을 다 가리치려 가리쳐야 돼. 피가라 주셔서 되는 것이 소풀이 돌 소방을 해야 돼. 아, 네. 딱 저 쇼를 뱅글 해서 사제게 은혜 회사를 쇼를 썼다고 뱅에도 나지 고고자네. 가는 가라도 막 카송세. 말아리 비대도 송은 남사는 뭐냐고. 걔는 무슨 삼인계적 쇼를 편이 다 대. 무슨 세말 와. 말아리 비들 나도 말와. 빼만 보여. 빼찍야. 다고 생각하면 사진 주고는 사족소리를 하고 말이야. 야. 가리 사제의 생각하면 설득을 주요 말이. 주요 말 사족생부 또 랑기를 차요. 사청생부 또 랑기를 가리 차로. 야, 실은 니마 나와 저 차반지 거 용왕 나들 랑기를 차요. 내 당시 사청생부 또 랑기를 쫓아가고 혹은 저요리. 삼모 당신은 사제의 성밭에 용띠 당시 대다 용띠 이제 가리로. 다 이제 삼형제도 소설 유를 요고 요리. 지선한테 다 랑기 유를 사청생 삼형제 오나? 이봐 랑기가 요거요. 별로 마지를 보지구나. 야, 전도 동담을 세나요 말와. 이봐 세는이 몰라. 야, 너 봤다 이거 뭐 추천을 와. 야, 대능이 발시도 상인이 기뻐 랑기가 창구구나. 근데 창구구나 어떻게 저도 쭉 그요. 내가 저거 말. 가리주고 요 말. 내가 버렸어. 내가 쫓고랬어. 나한테 갈랬잖아. 등인도 독좀 저거요. 지선은 게다 강세나 당 샘진 상태 피고 샘지 그 뜻이 지들 사족성 피 따대는 근데 쪽과 팔이 또 란지 차이 거야. 저 보통 샘교물 이제 샘교리 너가 땅으로 말 추천리 이건 너 바탕을 때 랑코로 랑문이 시고를 줘봐리. 야, 뒤따지 상식이 랑게 땅명이 샘을 놓고 요리 쌈띠니 대우는 대상주 귀신 지고요. 새끼 당주 파망이면 동동 내려가고 시랍리. 야, 다 뒤나오도 이제 쪼리배나 다 가는 배가만. 저 파시 쪽으로는 신은 쪼리배나 다 라게 쪼람타지 밤에 쪼람 거 보내더니 먹이와 샘을 밤에 타는 누가 쪼람탐지 됐다고 네 완전히 내 노도 요리. 이서는 남이 참고 요리 때는 삼바당 때문에 등기해야지. 이게 라린데 그걸 보여래. 삼바도 sem나오나. 별로 무슨 속차 타오는 이제봐도 이제봐도 배샤매. 저매. 말해. jimba가 사정에 jimba 취지 jimba 마직바 jim바지야. 또 차와줄라. 변고 jimba 총총기 땅나요. 사족서고 뒤대고 그럼 제보로送了 나디저 집에 jimba 땅나 세포바강 jimba 땅와자. 이피落地这个 진 전부적 이는 jimba 평치에서这가래这사족서고 또这나그 사람도 또 대리지 또 어때 당시 저기를 평주 안 줘봐 설심지를 접종 대상지 몇개 들이 싸우는 용로 주지 가래 취재인지 또 없는 사지 생기는 세부지 기발해 다른 말하지 송아 남시만 통유시 통시 남시만 통유시 통의 생기 답지 사지 버티 통 다와 고대 예미지 사지 생기 이제적이 뭐 사지 종대这个 송타와 생기는 상계이 별로 잡으는 로 강디요는 大新闻这个这我落的这么多不都咱们那个落的落我就把人要做新闻确实把人怎么呢我确实这么多不都哈胡了人咱们成功的路通了三级审计这个审计成功性没那个成功的路就话哈胡了这哈胡到东咱们得把哈胡这哈嘛我可是哪里个了第三了他上把等经济一点了得到个这里 동담에 대마 홍화라 나디 미관 도고 나디 미관 도는 이 사가 강 조조 인하도 봐. 이 이제 조랑 거 간에 별 자세라니 소디만 다 나니 제 제가 조가 파시 조랑 이게 차용 이는 송바다데 땡소는 자세라니 로로 시키고데 책대 내가 말이나 이거 뭐도 딱 봤다 그래 뭐서 딱 봐. 야 나가 별이 집아 짬 매지 달다지 따르지는 제도 손을 따다가 피 가세로 쳐자는 이다를 막고리 제일 대다 담아도 미나 다들 공소하는데 다 사성 돼 대도 대통기고 서로 봤다는 공소만 나와 대 사제 투지 추유디 대다오는 너나 가리송도 나는 이봐 중대 미기도 가다 나고 뭐 주지 나는데 나는 이봐 강야면 뭐 깨는 제가 공소랑 뭐지 뒤동다 하고 팔시 도구는 타고 줘봐 하고 올라 산족청도는 산족청때 라서는 체험 망보를 쌓아줄 산족청도 공소를 찍으려면 잘했다 어떻게 가려는 산족청도 쎄와라 야 주는 이 직진감더니 미직 장사 잡는 론 잡기 조금만 장사 잡대 이마지는 고소는 가가지고라 또 체로 다시 다 자랑이 다르고 어디 체로 다 담색차 체로 놀이라 디설더니 자다 컨트롤다 자도를 매 자치키도 컨트롤이 있어 그래서 컨트롤만 하는 나 류지 깨깨성 류들이 야도 독고요 산지게 류들이 뭐요 말 컨트롤랑이 말했지 책대성 대집이 동다로 싸우는 땅나 용진제자 요래 대다로 동달 계속나 다들이 다 쪽으로 다 토바는 야 유모가 레레서 최오 대라고 뒤지를 쓴 이 유모바들 같은 다 조다를 토고요래 딱 계산을 토고 대는 이제는 들이 산속성 모두들이 쳐서 아직을 떼어서 파존이를 다 유모가 좀 담그고요래 뒤선들이 삼바다쯤에 hingi에서 삼hin기에서 그렇게 탑대다 왔더니 조소 인하도마다 여세라니 소비만 되리
And so this morning, my Dharma friends, we have talked about loving kindness and compassion. And so we need to cultivate loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings. And it must be a compassion. Let's see. That was all. See if it means anything. Oh yeah. And so I didn't want to say something again. And so when we cultivate love, it must be a love that is merged with compassion. And then it becomes boundless love and boundless compassion. Otherwise it becomes ordinary. So love must be merged with compassion. They must come as a union. And then we talk about an altruistic mind that, like this horse that runs for the benefit of others. In the Vajrayana, that relates to the 7-limb prayer, which is an antidote, each an antidote to the 6 afflictive emotions. In the context of Pratimoksha and Bodhisattva vehicles, when we cultivate love and compassion, naturally, through having a mind of love, we will naturally practice the 6 paramitas. And also the 6 paramitas are an antidote to the 6 afflictive emotions. As it is explained in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, each of these limbs and also paramitas is explained. And that goes for anything that we do, either in a mundane sense or in a dharma sense. Even in a mundane sense, if you just engage in mundane activities, if you have a mind of love and compassion, whatever you do will become the practice of the 6 paramitas. There are many different explanations to explain the 6 paramitas. Milarepa has put it in brief, and he said, apart from practicing virtue in whatever you do, there is no separate method than that, no separate skillful means than that. So when we talk about gathering accumulations, gathering merit, what is it really that we are gathering? We are gathering loving kindness and compassion. When we talk about purifying obscurations, that just means purifying self-grasping. When we cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and then take the Bodhisattva vow, then we have received the essence of the Bodhisattva vow. If we just read the Bodhisattva vow, but we lack love and compassion, we have not really obtained the benefit of that Bodhisattva vow. And in general, whenever we sleep, actually there's a fault. There's always a fault, a downfall in sleeping. Because of the 6 afflictive emotions, the ultimate affliction is ignorance. And sleeping is ignorance. So there is a fault in sleeping. And the more we sleep, the more we gather the affliction of ignorance that continuously falls down into our mind stream like raindrops falling down. However, if we take the Bodhisattva vow and always maintain a continuum of loving kindness and compassion, then even when we are sleeping, we are accumulating merit continuously. And as practitioners of the Vajrayana, we necessarily must give rise to bodhicitta. And also in the Vajrayana context, it is taught that if you give rise to bodhicitta, there is no higher offering you can make to the Buddhas. There is no greater purification of obscurations than that. There is no greater blessing than that. So all these great qualities only arise from a mind of love and compassion. When we, as Buddhist practitioners, we are always talking about benefiting beings who have died, who are alive and who have died. And sometimes students ask, how are you benefiting those who have died? Do you see them actually? And in fact there is some who do see them, like Tilopa or Milarepa, for example. I have to say honestly, I don't really see the one who have died, but still I have great trust that I can benefit those who have deceased. And how can we trust in that? How can we benefit them? If we understand the qualities of love and compassion, we understand how we can actually benefit someone that is far away. For example, if there's 2 people who love each other, one is in America, one is, let's say, in Taiwan, and they have love for each other, no matter how far they are apart, when they think of each other, they always are joyful through just thinking of each other. And that is due to the love that they have for each other, the selfless love that they have for each other. So in just one instant that you think of others with love, you have parted from self-grasping. And when one dies, until one has separated from self-grasping, one experiences suffering. So the Bardo consciousness assumes a mental body where they experience great suffering. once we have separated from self-grasping, Buddha nature will reveal itself, and the ice block of self-grasping melts. And in the end, ice also just has the nature of water. So there is no one who cannot be benefited by love and compassion. It benefits anyone, the alive or the dead. We sometimes request some Sangha members to do some prayers for the deceased, for example. And what is the benefit of these actually? The benefit and how they really are benefited by these prayers is if we cultivate love and compassion for them. We talk about boundless love and boundless compassion. And there are 3 ways in which beings are benefited through our aspiration prayer. The first power, and there's 3 powers. So the first power is called the power of your own love. So that is the love that arises in your own heart, your wish to benefit all sentient beings. Such boundless compassion. We talk about boundless compassion for a reason. If it is not boundless, then we feel that love for some but not for others. So not that kind of biased compassion, but compassion for every sentient being. That is the power of your own love, your own compassion. Then the second power on how the aspirations are accomplished is called the power of the love of Tathagatas, of the Buddhas. That is the mind of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, which is vast love and compassion, expansive like space. Like Chinrezig, for example, who is the embodiment of compassion. It is taught Chinrezig pervades all the reaches of space. And it is not Chinrezig's form that pervades, it is his mind of love and compassion that pervades. So he has this all-pervasive quality, and that quality of all-pervasiveness is something that we can and must create for our own mind. And how we create that is just as we said before, you cultivate love, you train, you think about your parents, your friends, your teachers, your country, and so forth. You train your mind. The Buddha said, sentient beings are as limitless as space. And wherever sentient beings pervade, their suffering pervades. All sentient beings suffer. Anyone who has not seen the nature of their mind suffers. Only when we see the nature of the mind, we transcend suffering. And in order to become liberated, therefore, from suffering, we must necessarily see the nature of the mind. And so many of you who have experienced this practice will know what that refers to. And that's what a kind of boundless compassion is something that we must create in our heart, and then it becomes pervasive and can actually reach all sentient beings. So also, when we make our dedication prayers, therefore, for the deceased or alive, it can actually benefit them. And now, if one still does not believe that, there's another story that really shows that, the story of Milarepa. One time, Milarepa was in Lapchi meditating, and it began to snow for 6 months. And the road was cut off by the snow, and nobody could reach him. Milarepa was left alone. And his students thought that he must have died. And because they thought he died, they performed various ceremonies on his behalf. Feast offerings, smoke offerings, and other offerings. And Milarepa did not die. When he was staying in Lapchi for these 6 months, sometimes the Dakinis came and brought him a feast offering. Sometimes he extracted the essence of the wind. Sometimes he had no need for food because he naturally felt filled. And why did he feel that way? When his disciples found him alive, he asked them what they were doing, and they explained to him on certain days they were performing these offerings for Milarepa. And it was exactly on these days where Milarepa felt full and no need for food. So that is the benefit that we receive from making such offerings with love and compassion. So it really shows how a smoke offering, for example, or any other offering made with love really benefits beings. So that time Milarepa said it really shows how that actually is of benefit. And so from these teachings we have learned that actually benefit can be brought to beings in that way. So you can see this story in the life stories of Milarepa. So that is a very good sign of how love and compassion actually benefits beings. And what happened to Milarepa is a real story. Milarepa would not tell us a lie. And then there's many other examples like that. Also, when we talk about the Pure Lands and making offerings to the Buddhas there is no greater offering to make than the offering of bodhicitta. Because the Pure Land itself was created by bodhicitta. No one has made it in any other way. It is made by bodhicitta. And so all the different things that appear in this world, in fact, if we know how to view them correctly, are made by bodhicitta. All the natural things, for example, the sun and the moon, the clouds and the rain and so forth, are actually all Nirmanakaya manifestations. They are naturally arise, no one has made them, and they bring benefit and happiness to sentient beings. And what is the quality of all that? On the basis, there is love and compassion. And that love and compassion we must cultivate in our own heart. If we cultivate bodhicitta, love and compassion, then all the other perfections, such as generosity, are contained within that mind. For example, a mother who loves her child will not be stingy. Anything that the child needs, the mother will spare any expense. That is generosity. So generosity is the antidote to stinginess. Then the mother would not want to harm her child. That is ethical conduct. So the 6 parameters are exactly contained within just the mind of love and compassion. If we have love and compassion, we will naturally practice the 6 parameters. And so many times we engage in all these practices of the parameters and we do not see any results. And why? Because they always are tainted by self-grasping. For example, we think this is my child or this is my friend. Then we do good things to them, but still we are attached to them. And then through that grasping at a self, a medicine turns into poison. And for that reason, in the very beginning, we always cultivate the correct motivation of bodhicitta, thinking of all sentient beings. Because then, naturally, whatever we do will become a practice of the 6 parameters. Naturally, one will want to give, that is generosity. One will not want to harm if one loves, that is ethical conduct. And even if others harm you, because you love them, you will not get angry at them. So you naturally practice patience. Then you never lose the love for them. You always keep them in your heart. That is meditative concentration. And with mindful awareness, you understand that all sentient beings have been your parents, and you do not let loose of that mindfulness. And that knowing awareness, that is wisdom. But these 5 parameters are of no use if we do not apply diligence. We must be diligent in their practice. Then they become useful. And so diligence is lost when we lose our mindfulness. In all our activities, when we fall into heedless behavior, from heedlessness all non-virtuous conduct arises. Whenever the mind is distracted, our actions of body and speech will become mistaken. So how we can also understand that union of love and compassion. Love is the mind that we must cultivate, and compassion, through compassion we begin to engage in activity. So we love in our heart, and with compassion we act. And for example, when we don't understand that, then one may think that I'm poor and I have nothing to give, so I cannot be generous. But that's actually quite mistaken, because there's different types of generosity. There is the generosity of giving material things. There is the generosity of giving the Dharma. There is the generosity of protecting from fear and so forth. For example, even if you just protect this little animal, or if you just give them a little bit to eat, with bodhicitta, already you have accumulated great merit. It is taught that it is more beneficial to offer a spoonful of food to an animal with an altruistic mind than to offer a golden vase with a self-grasping mind. And that is due to the power of bodhicitta. So we had those first two powers. First is the power of your own love. Second is the power of the love of all the Buddhas. And then we come to the third power, which is called the power of Dharmadhatu. And so when we talk about making these offerings and purifying obscurations of all beings, how is that possible? It is possible through the power of Dharmadhatu, because the ground of Buddhas and sentient beings is one. Milarepa said, I do not see consciousness, I see primordial wisdom. All sentient beings actually are Buddhas. That is the view of inseparable samsara and nirvana. Samsara and nirvana have a single ground. Or the Buddha himself said, within all sentient beings is the Buddha. Or for example, it is like the light in this world. Although light manifests in different ways, in the end there's only just one such thing called light. All the light has the same essence. Or the water in the ocean. If you just pick up a drop of water, that drop has the same nature as all the ocean water. It has the nature of water. And so the same is true for your mind. Whenever you see the nature of your mind, you have seen the minds of all the Buddhas and all sentient beings, as there is just one such thing called the mind, the single ground. That is the seeing of the ultimate truth. And why do we not see this? Because we are obscured by self-grasping. And self-grasping can only be overcome if we give rise to a mind of love and compassion. And if self-grasping diminishes through compassion, you will see the actual nature of your mind. In the Vajrayana path, we relate to that when we practice the 7-limb prayer. And in all our activities, we should practice according to the 37 bodhisattva practices, within which the 6 paramitas are naturally contained and explained. And so the 37 bodhisattva practices, we must understand the essence of what actually is taught, even in these practices. For example, when it says, even if someone for whom one has cared as lovingly as one's own child regards one as one's enemy, and so forth. So then one begins to think about all those who have caused harm towards one. And if you just have that instruction, then it is sufficient. Then you understand that no matter how much other people harm me, only if I lose my patience, if I get angry at them, then I am lost. Otherwise, I cannot be harmed in any way. So no matter how many people harm me, I shall not get angry. So that is really what we should take from these verses. Or when it says in another verse, when others try to cut off one's head when one is utterly blameless. So what we should take from that is not really just take it literally, but understand that I must not get angry, even if others try to cut off my head. So we must understand the meaning of that, what it ultimately means. It ultimately means that I must practice patience, no matter what harm I will receive from others. And of the 6 paramitas, patience is really the most important aspect. Because if we lose patience, we lose bodhicitta. The bodhicitta we have accumulated throughout countless lifetimes is lost by an instant of anger. Because what is bodhicitta? Bodhicitta is love. And we lose love when we get angry. For example, even in a worldly sense, there's 2 people who get married, maybe 10, 15 years, they're happy together, and then one day they get angry at each other, they lose their love, and they separate, and begin to see each other as enemies. That is also the samaya that we talk about. To lose the samaya means to lose the bond of love. So therefore, there is no greater enemy that we must identify than our hatred and jealousy. That is our worst enemy. So even if someone were to come and take my body, then I would think, in the future I can get a better body, but I must not lose my patience. This body, as the Buddha himself said, has no essence. But if I get angry, that I will bring with me into future lifetimes. So that is the kind of understanding we should take when we read these lines in the 37 practices. When we understand that, we understand what is the essence. What is that horse of altruism running for? The essence is to recognize afflictive emotions as they arise with mindful awareness and overcome them with mindful awareness. Then we will be rewarded like this excellent horse. So that which must be gathered is love, that which must be removed is self-grasping. So the essence of this context of love and compassion that we must take here is that love must be in a union with compassion and must not arise separately from each other. And that is the essence of the 7-limb prayer, and also the essence of the 37 Bodhisattva practices.
다서나 이런 소리에 강는 바보고 조심을 잡수 소매 이 공부를 좁아타고 사축생 좀 잡수생기 이하도게 사공부 요리 참아 잡수생기만 사공해요 말아 나도 뭐지 제는 되고 없나 다랑 찍고들이다 이게 홍주곰이 뭐지 나와지 이 공부 요리 가시게 싸봐요. 당부 니도 빼마곰 니 이게 공곰님마다 고요라. 대상 저랑 찍버려도 공부요. 마시나. 이 동시고래 막고 저기 랑집들이 공리게 배노요 말이에요. 네. 사하 동시고 와서 된 공부 담아라도 송부리. 네. 저쪽지 양만 송네. 나시 라코로 고아지서 하기에는 무슨 좋지. 혼대 추탐지 사지에 거성고 공도 맡았다. 소설적 뭐 깨는 건데. 르제기 깨는데. 다 내가 담아서 그냥 폐기고 말이야. 혼대 추탐지 사지에 거성고 공도 섰고 야, 죽고 놓고니까 다 고치하래. 죽고지 다 받아 니가 죽고지. 얘는 느끼기가 죽고 자디고 새끼 담들 들자고 사제든 들지기 새끼요 냠대요. 그래서 라마 기비시니다 주시에서는 냠대요. 얘는 지금 들자고 새끼 담지라 들지기 가다니 빨라. 때서 따는 무시만 제발 찌빠다고 그래. 이제들 지금 못 저래. 산지 추죽거리 동지 찌빠차지 뒤치고래. 얘는 선호진 직디 장미바래. 남주지 새끼 장미바래나야. 선우지 직진데 류지 빼래. 류들은 용왕마요. 용왕마도 방을이냐. 용왕 영마가 공서. 똥이고 가는 로요. 동나부니. 이 남성은 유무가 나요래. 이 나들더니 이 시간을 전에 지랑이더니 들지기로 그 대화를 하야 병 되게 좋은 거요래. 대학 강의도 직권도 상고 도지상 되게 제일 좋은 거요래. 동나무 그것도 도지상 대상이 끼고 훌떡이거래. 단항이 주어지는 장소 최고 요로 누구를 켜려는 차트까지 켜고 찍마도 내지 사지 추적걸 못하는 거래. 근데 장소 최고다고 그랬더니 나팔 뛰다 차바대라도 뭐 처럼 나봐 나서 요 대상들이 딱 쫓고 공서더니 로건이 쫓고야 용네. 근데 당부들이 무슨 이제 느끼니가 이제 다 과해봐. 다 과해 다 쫓동이 봐. 대하고는 내가 다 마다바 차들지 다 부탁한데 상화 다낭 봐야지. 방법 일이란 걸 생각하되 이제 다 과래야지. 낭이 뭔가데 이사적 생각 최소의 시간을 줘도 요래. 제 시간을 줘도 속대더니 자통다고 누가 담아를 로스도 거를 줘도 요래. 나디다들이 다 다낭시에 말이야. 로아르도 소소 나바나도 등에 나바나도 무슨 내가 대야 주마다 오면 똑같이 대기요 말이 로아르도 참 저도 오 저아래 저아래 강의거든요 딱 다니다 이핑을 오니 빨리 다 저용 요래 나리 소비는 또 많네 어디에 다다마 사족세 맞기 주사고 좀 해봐 사고를 다 사족세 유를 찌마 타데 라미 그들이 이제 다요 그거래 제 다음은 다들 라를 라고 잡아라스 우리는 물을 못 제대로 그 한국이 물을 못 잡아지 못 봤다 그래 이제 좀 이제 자사 마지나 잡을 거기 자사 마지나 자사 마동나 잡을 거기 그거 잡아지는 또 한번 좀 그래 동에 용고 그래 제가 와 배제도 그 통통지도 네 그거 용고도 다 자사가 잡을 거래 이거 자사 정보도 자사도 가이게 정보 그래 도망 무슨 사족도 도망이니까 바보장도 좀 마셔요라 대그 랑 좁았답니다. 랑 등에 타고 가지고 잡기도 봐요 그거래. 대그때는 랑 동네 좀 대상 그랑 좁았다고 쪽쪽 매가 쉬는 사족도 노마는 요거래. 사족도 노마는 저는 또 단디에 바꿔고 그래. 인기도 놓치도 단디 매가 단디 매지 사족도 노마가면 쏘고요라. 대인 사지에 렉서 제 사지에서 다쳤도 다다 사족세 기마타데 사족세 너무 많은 거는 주 탐라바 쳐가오더니 사족세 너무 많은 주 야보고 관한 게 있어. 그는 무슨 바꿔 제거라. 마파랑 가서 그다 공부를 돼. 저도 그다 마오지 돼요. 가이가 바꿔야 돼. 세분대로 줄 인핑을 놓지나 이 당주를 나중에 오지. 말은 공 인핑을 놓지. 제가 바꿔야 돼. 이 당주를 파도 받아는 그 철도 마땅을 봤어. 사족도 파도 받으면 철 받다가 말이지. 그 상황이 저거지. 바꿔도 내가 대답을 자와탐 짓지 마라. 요새 도보 요래. 바꿔야 돼. 제가 파고 샘만 파나. 저거 도보 가서 내리가 파수고요 말가. 얘는 로마서 짧은 도마 주차를 사족도 도마로도 나 바꿔 이서 정말 제대로 오고. 나 견디니 나 바꿔니. 나 발견 파고 나 인생을 놓고 버렸지. 나 누가요 버렸지. 대매라 좀 바빠는 저강 도모 저거 도목할 때는 껍질야마도 관요 말하고 뒤다고 때는 또 사족성 이제서는 드리라고 루사는 저다 하는 저죠 저 사하제는 보통 도도 지시고 해야지 이제는 다 봐야 봐 내가 맞아봐 대의마시는 대신에 다른 걸 사고나 랑 자롱도도 저 타고 쉬어오는데 자롱들이 작동이다 쉬어서 그래 랑센 돈을 라면 또 오는데 바쁘게 되고 담보라게 줄돌이 이나 돌타고요. 배대다에 지네들이 상하제를 드린 줄고요.
So then the next point is the Yidam practice, the creation stage practice of the secret mantra, the Vajrayana. And so also here, first we take refuge in the three jewels, and then recognize that the actual protection is bodhicitta. So we first and foremost take refuge and cultivate bodhicitta. Even when we engage in any other practices, it is always preceded by that. So having taken refuge and cultivated bodhicitta, then we begin the visualization of the deity. And when we practice the deity, also sometimes people don't really understand how to engage in that practice. And so then they sit there and just think about themselves being there and just visualize like the lotus flower and the seed syllable hung and the sun and the moon disk. And they only visualize themselves but do not really understand the essence, the meaning behind the secret mantra visualization. So what is the meaning of secret mantra that we must extract? Drikung Master Dhammarata had said, see whatever appears and exists as the pure form of the divine deity. That is the perfection of creation stage in secret mantra. So everything that appears and exists, not just oneself. All phenomena in samsara and nirvana. And even when things appear in an impure way, it is just a temporary occurrence. In reality, everything is pure by nature. Everything is under the domain of the three kayas. If we do not understand that and we just engage in some artificial visualization, there is no real benefit from that. We must extract the essence of secret mantra when we practice the deity. And so we talk about all phenomena are the three kayas. The Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya are the pure aspects. In the Nirmanakaya, we have both pure and impure. That means appearance and existence, the universe and all sentient beings are Nirmanakayas. So in that context, we talk about pure and impure because in this world there is the appearance of those to be tamed sentient beings and those who tame sentient beings, the Buddhas and the sentient beings. But we must realize that although they appear in this way, actually their ground is a single one. They actually are the same in their mind. The only difference is having recognized this nature or not. But on the ground, we are same and one, on the ground of Buddha nature. In the Dharmakaya, we are the same. So, no matter how vast the universe may be and however many sentient beings there may be, a single person's body and mind is the microcosm of it all. A person's body consists of the 5 elements. So, the universe does. Therefore, a person's body is the microcosm of the external universe. A body consisting of the 5 elements, in true nature, when realized, the 5 elements are the 5 great mothers or the 5 female Buddhas, referring to the meaning of emptiness. So they are empty of self-nature. And then in the mind, the sentient beings, in the mind that person has the 5 afflictive emotions. When one realizes their true nature, they become the 5 wisdoms. So therefore, in reality, a person's body and mind, and thus the entire universe and all sentient beings contained, are the union of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, Yap Yom, pure by nature. We give it different names, such as Samantabhadra or Vajradhara. They all are contained within this single ground of Samantabhadra or Vajradhara. That is the single ground. When we cultivate pure view, we realize that single ground. Or for example, we have said when we pick up a drop of water from an ocean, that drop has the same essence as the entire ocean water. So that is the quality of the Dharmakaya, that quality that pervades all. And then water appears in different ways. There's oceans, there's clouds, there's rain, there's different rivers in this world. And the different manifestations are the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya forms. So in the very beginning we must understand the ground of the universe and all sentient beings. The ground is pure. Ultimately it is empty of self-nature. This is how we must understand it in the beginning. And things just appear impure temporarily. We must purify that impure perception. So the path of secret mantra is the path of pure view. And in the very beginning we must recognize that our own body and mind are pure on their ground. And although we have those 5 afflictions, if you give rise to bodhicitta, they will become the 5 wisdoms. And with that understanding we visualize the deity, and then we begin to realize the true nature of our outer form, and it will begin to appear pure like a rainbow in the sky. And in that way, through that practice, we accomplish the utterly pure body of Sambhogakaya. If we give rise to self-grasping, and based on that Buddha nature, then we temporarily experience the suffering and different forms in the 6 realms of samsara. And although suffering appears in different ways, it only appears temporarily, like an illusion. It will not last. It always changes. What is it that really changes is the mind, the thoughts in the mind. Either from self-grasping, one changes to self-grasping, or one transforms the mind into bodhicitta, according to the 37 practices. If you lack bodhicitta, you actually cannot really practice the yidam deity. The moment you give rise to bodhicitta, you have understood the essence of the yidam deity, the nature. So in the very beginning, we must understand the pure nature of all appearances when we visualize the deity. And so in the root verse on the Fivefold Path here, it says, see your own body, the king of deities. Your own body is the king of deities. So that body is the human body that is composed of the 6 elements or 6 constituents. That body is like the son of a great king. And if that young king does not take on the kingdom, but engages in crimes and begins to steal, also that king will be put into prison and suffer or even be killed. So even though we have these great qualities, this pure nature, if we engage in negative deeds, we will still suffer in the lower realms, in these 3 lower realms, or 6 realms of samsara. So that king must take on the kingdom. And how does a king take on the kingdom in our context? Through cultivating bodhicitta. So when we take the bodhisattva vow, that in fact is preceded by the refuge vow, and we take the refuge vow in order to seek protection from suffering, because we seek liberation from suffering. And then we begin to understand that as long as we wish for our own liberation, we actually cannot really be protected. And so therefore we take the bodhisattva vow. And if we take the bodhisattva vow and cultivate bodhicitta, self-grasping will diminish. Whenever you have an altruistic mind, you do not think about the self. So self-grasping diminishes. Just as it is explained in the text when we take the bodhisattva vow, today you are born in the family of the Buddhas, the supreme or noble family. Before we take the bodhisattva vow, one is like an ordinary person, even like a dog, for example, just an ordinary being. And later one becomes the son of a king, superior. When we take refuge or the bodhisattva vow, we talk about the noble sangha or the superior sangha. So what is superior actually? For example, they put me on a high throne and then others sit below. What is it that elevates you actually? It is the altruistic mind. And so I have cultivated an altruistic mind. That means if others harm me, I will not harm them in return. An ordinary person, when being harmed, will respond and harm in return. For example, when you see His Holiness the Dalai Lama, what a high throne they built for him, why he's elevated, it is really the mind that is elevated, the bodhicitta that is elevated. If you lack bodhicitta, then a high throne has no meaning. That is the meaning of being put high. So once we have taken the refuge vow and the bodhisattva vow, we should take some pride in being a noble sangha and thinking that now I am a noble sangha. That means I must cultivate an altruistic mind. I must be able to practice patience. And then you will be actually superior. If you fail to cultivate an altruistic intention and still sit on a high throne, the only benefit of sitting on a high throne is that it will begin hurting your butt. But actually there is no other benefit than that. So that is the essence of the deity practice. to cultivate bodhicitta and to understand the ground. It is said in the root text, cultivate the visualization of the deity, that is your own body as a deity, the king of deities, in the unchanging ground. And the ground, as we have explained, we must realize appearance and existence to be pure. Although things appear in an impure manner, it is temporarily, we perceive it temporarily in an impure way. In reality, appearance and existence is pure. So when you visualize the deity, it is like melting the ice block with the hot water of bodhicitta, and you will be liberated from suffering. It is also taught in the refuge vow, once we are liberated from our own suffering, then we can show the path to liberation also to others. So first we must free our own mind stream, and then we can liberate other sentient beings.
살짝 가시를 빼 능해 주고 혹시 사용 줄로 너를 직장에 보면 되게 가래했어요. 직비들이야. 안 고아들이 사용을 해. 고아들이 있잖아. 오늘 며칠에서 보증면서 보증을 너는 마중 강에서도 뭐 같이 대오를 왔대 빼지다. 레기 짓을 두고 요래. 그냥 고마한테 마와 말이네. 레기 짓을 당했대. 레나 반나서 사람들이 좀 중을 내다. 좀 중을 내다. 가다 그띵이 래. 니 요래. 这农民就跟正常的来把卡给卡掉了，那就身边的刚才个性的来的，说出来，他就找你，准备给这上边上都应该说这种东西，这那个吃了吃了那完那说起种卡了什么我觉得别的到了多了，一直这个反映到西上，这里一直没达到没人写了我好多有的，呀，如果好多他那就都有的。 这女一的搞定了，牙差或者马杀肉、好多有的，这体力现在都好好老了，我们三级干嘛多，一个好好都不用来，那体力的，希腊的点的，希腊的，就把这体力给希腊的，哪个希腊的这样的，另外差看的，哪个希腊的，肯定钱多了，或者多人民就是这里，或者开不灵的也可以用嘛的，这个。 양답을 치는 게 개인기 요래. 양답을 치는 많이 봐. 딱 내몇 것만 통지 요 말이지. 대 우거 초대 깎여 요지. 가지고 요 말고 가네. 고통고 거야 맞도 세지가 도착한 얘기 요 말이. 대다고 공시네. 대들이 다 깨는 거거든. 깨는 다 무슨 공을 되니 깨는 봐. 나서 깨는 데라. 양 동적 강에 동쪽이 다난 거 줄이. 이제 다 봐요 하고. 동네 미바데 가 깨름데 가고 깨시 용어 깨름지 깨시 용어 조름소 깨름 조름지 깨와 쳐와지라 가도 야래 대냐들이야 대요래 이 깨름도 더 남아 이 요래 예비 무슨 상도 예요래 대 가이게 용 깨름 남아 예요래 말지 공지 도셔 유지지 깨름 남아 예요래 제일 팀들이 제일은 대답을 받는데 좀 그거래. 이 사람이 제일은 당시 낫지. 보고 자로 낫지. 보고 담지 담아 보고 자로 납시 대라서 봤더니 늘 담지 해리 그놈 먹고 나와지. 제로 대야 보시나지. 계시 좀 잡고요. 계시 좀 와서. 이 저런데 계시 좀 와서 계시기라. 가도 가야 해지.
And so one understanding that you should take from what was explained previously, and that is very important, is no matter how vast the outer universe may be, it is contained within my own body. No matter how many sentient beings there may be, our minds is the same. This is the essence that we need to take from that. And then again, when we talk about this single ground, the single mind, then sometimes students ask, so if you say there's just a single ground, then why do some people experience so much suffering? They die in earthquakes and floodings, for example, and here nothing happens. Why is that? Some people experience illness and are wounded and hurt in their bodies. Some people are always well and fine. Why is that? It is because we follow along the karmas that we have accumulated. And beings have accumulated various karmas. There is two types of karma. There is the collective karma that created the outer universe. And then there is the individual karma, the individual actions that sentient beings engage in. And due to that, they experience individual experiences. As Lord Jigten Sumgön has said, karma is the embodiment of the momentary thought that a being gives rise to. So, although water appears in different ways, or even ice, there's ice and there's like snowflakes and different ways in which it appears, but the ground still is a single one. There's a single basis. And in terms of the physical form, the body that we have, it will come to an end. It will be dispersed and turn into ashes. And the same is true for the outer universe. It will be dispersed. This is a point that also scientists have seen these days. In old days, only the Buddha knew about that. Now, the wisdom of science and the wisdom of the Buddhist view meet. And very intelligent scientists understand the Buddhist view. And at least one cannot actually refute it. One can actually not place an argument that would refute the Buddhist view. So there are some scientists who have a very materialistic view and they only believe what they see with their eyes. That is one way of viewing at it, but at the same time, the view, the authentic view, cannot be refuted by any argument. Although they may say that temporarily, it is nothing really that one can pay much into because they cannot refute the authentic view. And so when we practice the creation stage practice of the deity, there's all sorts of different ways of doing that. The first point that we must understand when we practice the deity is pure view, understanding that everything that appears and exists is pure by nature. The second point we must understand is the creation and completion stages and the point of their practice. The creation stage practice, that is the visualization, that purifies the existence of birth. The completion stage practice purifies the existence of death. So through creation and completion stages, we overcome the ordinary birth and death. And we talk about 4 different types of creation stage practice. And there's different ways of practicing. There is concise, middling, and elaborate practices. The 4 ways of visualizing, the 4 types of creation stage, relate to the 4 ways in which a being can take birth. Either in a womb, or in an egg, or through heat and moisture, or miraculous birth. Each of the 4 creation stage practices purifies one of these 4 types of birth. For example, the birth in a womb, in that creation stage practice we are introduced to how actually a child evolves and how it is born, the way in which we are born. Understanding that, we will know how to purify the existence of birth. And understanding the completion stage, we learn how to purify the existence of death.
내가 시골 돌아선 별에 쌀과 박바 띠바 선소 Jerem Tamchi Tumutita, Jerem Riba Karina, the Jar de Go, Sava Tapati Bas, Sava, Napa Sava, Semi Shatoko, Lakoti, Semi Shalata, Jerem Nagi Shatoko, Fai Kuzuk, Shatan, Kopal the Tawatan Kira, that turns you for you. They Tamchi, Saji Kosango committee, Zok Kokoso. Tuko Kong Musan the Viore. Hashiko, or the Tanka race, the Kodaris, the Maris, the Risambiore, Sangmare, Holy Sambiore, the Maris. It don't go to Misa Maria, Misa Maria. You know, the Lopocos, you go to Muni, Maina, take it, don't get to Priore. You did to move a stone at the Lopocos, don't see new song. Yet the little all over my way. So sorry. Lopocos, so Lopocos, don't see news to the Marie. Marie. The Family married the Lopocos, because of the demand, make me a cup Munera. Or Taka the family Mara. The family do it to your family. Spend on the flag with the bomb shoe. Jay, some shot to your money. Taka the Megaton Taka, Zuya boy would be, but to say that the bar. The little Yaka, the pay Yakodo to touch you. They didn't make make the party the Chupari. Send the unity pass you at in make it the Bagitumna. Hala, the Saway woman, Mida Shire, Chichi, Monkum, Gotham, Yulatam, Shago tell the bottom, the younger Samotana. Three, some capture Shire word three. Machana classes, Siachi, Bocha, word. Shana. Three younger sometimes horse car semi, sometimes Shaki or Megaphone, my Rang send. Kashi, some Machana, not semi Jayamega, then you can't yell. Several boys shower the flat Jayamega, flat Jayamega. Flower Siachi, oh, Gine the watching in several Macharum, they're changing sometimes Shaki or Shama Shaki on Mary. Gine the city of did you oh, the Sharon, Silado, Namado, Samodana, or Flag, the key, the Shardon, do not gongos of glory. The Yena do not go out. Kyle Shadow, Rank send me long, Rank send to talk to Mato, Yena never have go glory. Rank read the Major, sing quarantine on the Beto governor, send the Koran John to Sam. La Maina, Rank knew the doctor, Churaga to part of the train, Churaga Zuko the table, send clothes shot the year. Send your word, send Melong and you tell your Mary. There's the same Mewashi, send the Melong and Bashi. The Kana General Jertabashi. Three Tatilla, Yin Hova Tamape, Shimata Chapa Wata, Madini, flying teaching, the last Tapar train. 3 minutes something the table top of 3. Something Malaka Charles long to the lot of body, Tomongong group lot of what. Musan looking to your Sarvati. Some Sargo your age.
And so whichever of the 4 types of creation stage we practice, we must practice always 3 points whenever we engage in creation stage practice. And these 3 points are clarity, recollection of purity, and divine pride. In any of the 4 types of creation stage practice, we must practice these 3 steps. So first, there is clarity. That is the clear appearance of the deity's form in your mind. And sometimes it's hard to visualize the entire form of the deity, and so therefore we look at a statue or at a tanka, like an image of the deity, and it is very meaningful to have such an image of the deity. Of the three kayas, such an image of the deity belongs to the Nirmanakaya. It is a created Nirmanakaya, a made Nirmanakaya. And so then again, some people may think that that's just a statue, that's just a picture. It's not real, that's not the real deity, it's just fake. So people think that, and from one aspect it is true, it's not actual deity, but there is something like it's called the like corrupt conventional, something like that. Although it's not real, it still performs a function, as Lord Chikden Sumgön has said. In the like corrupt conventional, it can perform a function. So although it is fake, it can perform a function. So yes, it is not the real deity, but still it performs the function of a deity. When we see the statue or another image of the deity, although it is not the real deity, still it appears in our mind. Because, for example, when we are just explained by words how does the deity look like, then it will not just like that appear in our mind. But when we see an image, when we actually see it with our eyes and we see the form, it will appear in our mind. And we will be enchanted by this form. We will think this is a nice form. And so first a sort of desire arises. One wants to look at that. So through the eyes, through the path of the eyes, we cultivate love and devotion in our heart for the deity. And then having looked at the picture, we close our eyes and then have an approximate appearance, an image of the deity in our mind. And so then again and again we look at this picture. The deity appears in many different ways, in the head and the hands and the implements and all the different elements that make up the deity. And when we see that, we cultivate faith and love for the deity. And then we think about the deity again and again and again cultivate love for the deity. And at some point, although in the beginning may be unclear, at some point it will appear clearly in our mind. And even if it is not clear, sometimes people say that they still never forget about the deity. So of these two, what is better? Either to see the deity clear or to never forget about the deity. It is better not to forget about the deity. For example, if you always think about Chenrezig, even if you don't see Chenrezig, sometimes you may see, sometimes you may not see. But if you always think of Chenrezig, then you will always be filled with faith and love. And that is really the essential point of deity practice. And then for the visualization of the deity, where does it appear? Does it appear outside or inside? We talk about front visualization. We are instructed visualize that deity in front. Although it is said that way, in reality the deity is nowhere separate from your mind. It's not anywhere outside from your mind. Your mind is like a mirror, and whatever you think about, the deity will become that. The mind is like a flower bud that can blossom into anything. Not even talking about deities. If you just have a friend that you love very much, and you think about this friend, the mind already has become that. The mind is just like a mirror. It can become anything. So when you practice the deity, then you let go of ordinary samsaric clinging fixation, and you remember the qualities of the deity. And at times it will appear clearly, at times it will not appear clearly. In any case, when the deity remains with you and you never forget about the deity, sometimes people have dreams about the deity, and that the deity directly appears to them or gives a prophecy, and also through that they accomplish the common cities accomplishments. So that is the first aspect of clarity. Then we take a break for 20 minutes and drink some tea.
Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tata Savata Pati Masum Koni. Napa Savatelia. You want for a big husband. Right? You get him young. And you're young to you. Tamuko, Pedini, Zumdini, Sajak, Che, Lumdinato, or Takartan, Yatan, Takartan, that you have gone. Doctor part of gone. Then it took only Margom, with the tone, same the remote synergy. Gone, the English also took you away. Nothing to Rinpoche the monk, Tingmo Gomnati, something toxical golden English. 싸움이 생각이 좋다고 그랬어요. 그렇게 그래. 저는 왜 장난들이 장난을 제 장을 깔리더니 싸워하더니 파이 꾸지 차로 삭자. 나 남아서 그래. 당기를 강이 다과 되나. 난 두규의 용띠에 대 참았으니 새 꾸지 차로 기능을 또 그래. 할때 대도 차로나 20g 지더니 그바토그 라마탄지 뒤용띠지 꾸지 차로든 속 차리고 대차로더니 당랑지 다다라이 다딘지 다 빠지 마지 변의 시와나 이제 조금 요래 라마자 대통지 조금 돌지도 사포고 따래죠 야 대통지 레리게도 계속을 빼는 사 가시를 그렇게 정도래. 되는 두기를 바로 서로 놓고 따래. 그랬더니 어디에서 주인공이요래. 근데 꾸준히 저렇게 하길 뿌듯더니 rinpoche 셀때라서 봐. 이게 이마다 셀가 동대다고 이말 뿌듯더니 그렇게 이제 말이 야통다고 이거래. 뭐 동방 나빠서라지. 대동강은 별도 셀이 좋고 지금 가는 그런데 rinpoche 나서는 사족습이 셀게 빼. 총총 들으면 내 빠치고 리탕치고 요래 때리더니 rinpoche 나서고 되면 이지다. 요래 있어라. 사이프지 차로도 그봐. 신부 요래. 대라더니 다다 타마를 똑바 저와는 깨는 명도 다 봐이소. 깨는데 영장에도 보는데 타마를 받더니 뭐죠? 지 차로 대라서 뭐 담지 바닥발 변조고 요래. 이 비용을 이네 빼는 소탈을 갖고 자다 평화 지나서 막 방법을 요래. 아이가 방법을 나오니 막 다디 용도 나가 지대도 나를 됐다고 얘됐다고 나됐다고 나 요거 이걸 때려 세는 좀 받아 잡아시 마다 기배우네 뭐 좋고요 말이 그래서 뭐 좋고요 말이 진도 좋고요 말이 저 소상을 걸어 마음다리 했지 사하를 깔라고 가리는 좋고요야 내용을 놓고 좋고요 가리 나요 말 나면이 사족 생각나도 플라티다 때 이상들이 플라티다 때 별로 제티로 뭐 딱발 뭔데요나 내용만 가리 롱도 진짜로 가리는 제티로 뭐 진짜 소 돌면 되지 소라고 소사 봐마고 일반적으로 말이지 나중에 말 나중에 요미 진거지 나중에는 용진이 겨도요 용탕지 용진이 겨도요 나중에 이거 빨리 빼고 기타가 소소사 후바도 하나 나는 되어도 통도 나는 그냥 소놈 치가 와서 덮고요. 또 그냥 사촉성이래. 근데 저는 뉴신은 삐끗거리지 제발 하고 그랬더니 소설도 없고 싫었다. 그랬더니 누구든지 많이 봐. 오 상하게 럽적까지 너무 대리지. 나중에 보통 플라이스는 동물이 이참 야촉을 왔어. 소탈을 가면 나는 집에 나지 맞아 그랬더니 다 나지는 시바하더니 노죽도 말았어. 그랬더니 동물은 뉴모만 있잖아. 그랬더니 가리는 애들이 오래 그래 뉴모배 맞으나 다들이 반자 유몽대 주봉 예제 유몽이 보적 공주에서 뭐 보적이 좀 유몽을 잘 타겠지. 유몽을 잘하면 가리는 그거였어. 어떻게 내가 닭과 진바지. 자 다리도 좀 밤에 제는 탐지 다리들 하면 사직이 다리 잡서 등사상지 그니 저로 도다리를 해야지. 그래서 잡으면 그 자동들 거리 시합도 빼래. 그래서 시합을 간디래. 빼는 거 집에 시합을 빼는 일을 시당은 자 시당도 yap고 말이다. 시합도 딱 좋으래. 시합도 라저게 빼, 매게 빼. 그래서 앞으로도 그저 매공 받고 요래. 유보고 꽉차 유보도 지만도 받았지. 시합도 또 통한 저마다고 통을 뒤배래. 매당 들어가요. 매게 보면 딱 야기다 쓱쓱고 요라. 매대들이 있고. 영화를 안 지면 용띵이 뜨고 요래. 데려더니 빼당 동문이 자용하더니 이렇게 보고 양성을 해. 네 빼게 받았니. 뽕빠 마지 빼두는 콩 주세. 뒤랑 동지 하마고는 빼도 야들 빼도 동이 몇시요 말이. 그냥 고아무져서 파 일하라. 자꾸 요래. 너무도 이제 어디라가 이나 대지고 파도 요래. 농자 소용시요 말이. 그래서 주탐지 쳤다 왔던 데 시골 파 지라 짜줘야 요 말이. 신앙을 돼. 너는 저는 그지 잘 강해지. 마다 받고 시만도 받았지. 다 고노래지. 그래서 잡으면 저정도 없어. 되고 보시만도 받아. 저도 시합을 안 유리선지. 저도 시합이 저도 용띵시요. 정리 말이야. 대다고 삼을 이 받만 보셔야 요리. 이래야지. 다다 레파무바리 대다 계르냐. 고마무디와 타지 라이디 그지 잘도 동심보 요리지. 너나 대상길 뭐도 지마마도 야통다 그러지. 리삼난도 요라. 사과 닭바지.
So we have talked about the first point of this stream, there's a clarity, recollection of purity, and the divine pride. And so first we have said the clarity, that is to see the image of the deity with great clarity. And then again, one engages in this practice according to one's mental capacity, highest, middling, or lower. In an ideal case, how one trains in the visualization of the deity is that one can, for example, begin with the bottom part of the deity, like the lotus seed, and then move through different parts of the deity upwards and until one reaches the crown of the deity, and then again from the crown one visualizes one's way down. So in that way, when one gradually visualizes, one draws that image really in one's mind stream. And through this practice, in fact, the creation stage will become quite clear. If you do this over and over again many times, then at once, at some point, the deity will actually appear in your mind. So that is the clarity. And so then when we visualize the form of the deity with the implements and its hands and the legs and so forth, then we also must understand why the deity appears in this way. All the elements, like the implements and so forth that make up the deity, represent the inner enlightened qualities of the deity's mind. They are displayed in a form of the different elements that make up the deity. So those great masters who have realized that, they understand the pure aspect of the deity. They understand that each element and each implement of the deity only represents a certain quality in the deity's enlightened mind. So the second point is the recollection of purity. For example, peaceful deities are adorned with 13 ornamentations, called the 13 Vajrasattva ornamentations. Or some other wrathful deities are depicted with the 6 bone ornaments. They, for example, represent the 6 paramitas. So when we see the different form of the deity, then we remember the enlightened qualities that these actually represent. So, for example, the deity also is adorned with jewel ornamentations, gold, for example. Then we should understand the meaning of that, what that gold represents. For example, the gold and also other brilliant jewels represent bodhicitta, something that is very valuable. Even a small piece of it is very valuable. And so when you visualize the form of the deity, it does not appear in a material way, possessing any true existence, but it clearly appears like a rainbow in the sky, but yet it lacks a true nature. It lacks any essence from its own side. So it is appearance and emptiness. When we visualize the deity with all the different elements that make up the deity, the purpose of doing that is to transform ordinary thoughts into pure thoughts. So first we transform impurity, impure grasping, into the pure form of the deity. For example, in the context of pratimoksha, the individual liberation, all of these ornamentations, for example, is not allowed. One is not allowed to wear perfume or jewels, ornamentations. All these adornments are something to be abandoned in the context of pratimoksha. And that is because in the context of pratimoksha, there still is the grasping at a self. One thinks that this is my ornament, and I am this or I am that, and I have this and that. There's this constant thought of an I. There's a grasping to the I. And because there is a grasping to the I, one is not allowed to wear ornamentations, wear perfume, and so forth. So in that context, these adornments are objects to be abandoned. However, in the Vajrayana, in the secret mantra, one can partake of anything. One can partake of any of the 5 sense pleasures. And that is because in the context of Vajrayana, there is no I. When you have cultivated bodhicitta, you have the awareness of being the deity. For example, you think, I am actually Tara. And then when you meditate on Tara, seeing yourself as Tara and putting on ornamentations and enjoying the 5 sense pleasures, actually it becomes an accumulation of merit, and there is no fault in that, because there is no grasping at self. So the difference lies in whether one grasps at a self or not. If there is no self-grasping, then one transforms faults into great qualities. When we practice the deity, if we practice the deity with a self-grasping mind and make offerings to the deity and have some expectations to obtain some results, then we actually only obtain half the merit. We will lose some of the merit due to our self-grasping intention. So what makes the difference is an instant of perception, the way one turns one's mind, whether one gives rise to bodhicitta or a self-grasping mind. We cultivate this awareness through applying the discerning wisdom. And so from the perspective of Vajrayana, anything can be appropriate. As there is no self-grasping, there is also nothing prohibited. There is anything is allowed. One can enjoy any of the 5 sense pleasures and wear jewel ornaments and so forth. In the context of pratimoksha, all that is not allowed because there is a grasping to yourself. So the grasping is not permitted. That was the point of the Buddha. So the essence of that is that we must eliminate the afflictive emotions. And if we have already eliminated the afflictive emotions, then we can partake of anything. So in any context, in any of the paths, what is to be abandoned are the afflictive emotions. Lord Chikdun Sumgyen said, the 84,000 different Dharma teachings are a single antidote to the afflictive emotions. So we only need to eliminate the afflictive emotions, and once they are eliminated, one can partake of anything. So the second point in the Yidam practice is the recollection of purity. For example, when we visualize Vajrayogini or any other deity, we hear about the clear aspects of that deity that make up the deity, the different implements. And then one may think that this is just an ordinary implement. But you must understand that it represents an enlightened quality in the deity's mind. For example, Manjushri holds a sword. That sword represents wisdom, the mindful awareness that cuts through negative emotions. For example, when anger arises, and in that very moment you recognize, oh, the hatred has arisen, this is my true enemy, I must not give way to it, then you already cut through it. And that cutting through awareness, that is the wisdom sword of Manjushri. Sometimes also the wrathful deities are surrounded by masses of fire, and fire also has that quality of burning away. And what is burned away is our grasping at our negative thoughts, our afflictive emotions, habitual patterns. Wisdom awareness recognizes them as an illusion and therefore burns them away. That is the nature of fire. It burns any object away. And also fire, as it is an element, has the nature of the female Buddhas. So it also represents that quality. So it is important that when we apply an example, that we also understand the meaning of that example. Lord Chikdun Sumgyen said, if we only look at the word, if we only look at the illustration but lack a realization of the meaning, then we will not grasp the essence of what is being conveyed. For example, we look at a tree, we inquire in all the different branches and leaves, but we forget about the root. In the Dharma, we must understand the root. That is most important. And whatever we know above that, that is excellent, but we must necessarily understand the root of what is being taught, the essential meaning. So all the different elements that make up the deity, the ornamentations and the different implements of the deity represent an enlightened quality of the deity's mind. And the visualization of these elements purifies our ordinary grasping at a concrete reality. So for example, the sword of Manjushri, someone who has a grasping at a concrete reality will just think that's a sword and will not think anything else about it. But in reality, that sword represents something. It represents the enlightened qualities of Manjushri's mind, of wisdom awareness. So it's not an actual sword, but it represents a quality. So that is an essential point to understand when we visualize the deity. And then for beginning practitioners, when we visualize the deity, then we may not be able to have a clear visualization of the entire form of the deity with all its implements and ornamentations. But it is good to just know that all these implements represent what they represent, and that they represent the enlightened qualities of the deity's mind. So the point of seeing it that way is to cut through the grasping at a concrete reality. The deity appears like a rainbow in the sky. So we cut through the grasping at a concrete material reality. And that is the point also of recollecting the purity of the deity.
일진은 다다 반항들은 동다 방법 요래 진능이 다 씨발 장데 집보시 동치보에 다 씨발 강리 다다 그 동보 똑바티 초초 다 그러라 다 이 다낭기 다다 랑글 생이가 선입이야 돼. 드바들아. 다도 니 다니 니지 또 봐지. 저들 다지 니지 또 봐지. 이 탐지 니 드바다 또 봐지. 탑톡 있어도 또 봐지. 다고 다다 마다발 포와대 다 참아 다 봐라 하죠. 들이 다 봐도 다도 공만이 돈데. 이러고 그래. 대 답할수 있거든요. 나도 다 난지. 내가 답고 이미 띠갈 마다 뚱갈. 그래도 다 사절 매롱 유황하지. 라미가 오 사사에 가사가 사리 사사를 돌려요. 저초를 돌려요. 나 담제 이제는 유황하지. 사지가 공식 돌려요. 사지가 제일 공식 뚜벅거리고 돌려요. 대도 이 내가양 편익을 빼라. 그래서 물을 못 저는 용왕만에 줘요. 들었더니 내상이 가려야 쇼크 받는 바요 받들이 차리요래. 들었더니 용왕만에 저리 다 빨리 염증을 하지 있었나? 그런 것을 갈아도 쳐는 오 쳐도 못 막으라는 일이 있어. 초대 줄은 들었지 대바라도 요요래. 대와. 대대와 요거를 새벽 가 대와 이거래. 추리에서는 이거보다 정말도 그때 봐도 요거 말해. 리리들이 다 요강 가서 감탄제들이 이제 다 봐야 봐도 시골을 했지. 대남나 혼자 양철 좋아해 보여. 요강 가서 다 봐야나 사로 맞고 저로 맞고 요강 가서 사용다 요강 누가 쉬지도 않는 없이. 접대들 인하용이요. 내 보내. 대답을 줄 발이 가는 데 걸. 휴라는 게 랭이 봐, 싸라? 랭이 봐, 지금 미술로 돌을 저러고, 랑게 내야지. 초속을 내서 막 내버려야지. 용암에 가야 제요 말이지. 지금 양 내집 되는 파하고, 어떻고, 그래. 랑조들이. 다 빨절. 다 빠져, 그것도 설마다 빨절로나? 어때, 다 촉지. 동국이등에 내거든, 그거. 대시성들이, 은히 다 빨렸지. 마다가 빨렸다, 나중에, 유무 빨렸지. 유무 쫙 나뉘어서 다 좋잖아. 야, 제 당시에 다 관련 좋잖아. 다른 게 생긴 유무가 돼야 다 알고 요래. 유무가 다 손에 찡하는 정도고 요래. 다 저는 야 아마 다 손이 되고 다 잡으려는 강에 동이 가디 요걸 사차 라라 맨날 끼다는 걸 로자다 급지. 로자다 삭발리는 다음 야사는 원래 미피체 돼요가. 진짜 성공 말이야. 그래서 나타나면 눈이 저는 이제 이거 눈이 막 통하죠 말이. 혀인지과 송진지과 매진지과 모인지과 마뭐 정말 제 랭이 보고 안 가. 얘네가 되게 탈이 오래지. 먹기면 되고 서로 미는 무슨 미네. 약간 농구리. 기분 되면 되게 사이 통지 쪼요래 무슨. 레리저도 대사들이 될 때 따서 손이 힘 탑발이지 지요래. 있어야 돼 로마도 레리저도. 로마 교신이 나지 추수만한 게 요 말이지. 나 기자시 하는 게 맞도 요 말이지. 교신이 나봐 추수만한 게 지금 말이 비싸 지금 말이. 아, 또 돌지는 오라이게 달라서 느끼게 놀라고 시. 말이 집어 라르는 지 먹고 네 출신이 되게 니는 니도 가는 요 말이야. 나 교신이 나 뵀으나. 아. 교신이 나 뵀이나. 오, 사단로 마음째 담지 폐교 추니게 폐교도 로거를 봐.
사단로
가지고 로이게 돌아서 느끼게 좀더 매게 나도. 이 추기에 지나가더니 로고만 넣어요. 로를 봐. 왜 로고 요 말아. 왜 되게 용을 시시 요 말고. 이게 지금 말 동남에 동남에 시시 요 말아. 이나 양선 이제 등에 하고 요래서 등에 용을 가리 양선 있고 하고 요래. 내가 늘 주도록 해. 주택이 이제 주택이는 편이 요래. 제 방법밖에 없냐. 제가 용기 개와도 이제는 니도 가야 요 말이지.
So the word pure view also is very meaningful, and so pure, that word itself already is very meaningful. Pure just means, for example, when you have a dirty face and you wash it with water, it becomes pure, clean, purified. And so that pure view we practice for our own body and mind, and also towards the entire universe and all sentient beings. We, as ordinary beings, have a grasping at the concrete reality of this universe and the sentient beings. There is a dualistic grasping of purity and impurity. All dualistic grasping in the end comes down to the grasping of self and others. There's always a duality that arises. And through cultivating a pure view, that dualistic grasping is purified. So first, through the deity practice, we purify impure perception into pure perception, and ultimately we purify even that pure perception into emptiness. So ultimately everything transforms into emptiness. So in the context of cultivating pure view, what are the qualities of pure view and what are the faults of an impure view? For example, the 5 elements or 4 elements of earth, water, fire, wind. When we see earth, we just think that's earth. We see that all over. When we see water, we just see that as water. But in reality, the 5 elements do not transcend the enlightened activities of the Buddha. Therefore, the elements are really nirmanakayas. When one understands that, one will see everything completely pure. For example, this human body consists of the 5 elements. And as it consists of the 5 elements, with this human body, we know that we can do many things. It is very powerful. We can either use it to engage in positive or negative karma. That is the power of the 5 elements that we use as a support. And these 5 elements are by nature pure. We call them the 5 great mothers, the 5 female Buddhas. For example, when you have that pure view, you wash your food, for example, with water, then you will not just think that's just water, but you will think that's mamaki, the Dakini mamaki. And when you use this water, you will give rise to faith and love and great joy. You will not just think that's just water. A normal person would think that is just water, and they just leave it with their belief in the reality of how the water appears to them. So in that way, through cultivating pure view towards anything that we encounter, we gradually cultivate with one by one, with each thing that we encounter, we cultivate a pure view. We increase our pure view. And so again, somebody may have something to say about that. Sometimes people then say, so well, if you say that the 5 elements are pure, then why are there natural disasters? Why are there earthquakes? Why are there floodings? There is so much harm that is being caused by the elements. If you say it's pure, why does that happen? And so what is the answer that we give here? We still follow the law of karma. And if we have accumulated negative karma, we transform medicine into poison due to the karma that we have created. So the 5 elements actually do not do anything. They just are the way they are. But due to our karma, we experience either suffering or happiness. So when we practice pure view, we understand that whatever appears is pure, but ultimately we also must understand the workings of karma within that. From our perspective, why do we not perceive things as pure? It is due to the afflictive emotions, and the root of these afflictive emotions is self-grasping. When we purify self-grasping, naturally we also purify the other afflictive emotions. They are transformed into wisdom, the 5 wisdoms. In the past lifetime, if we have engaged in negative deeds, then in this lifetime, in this world, we can see people experience great difficulty. Some other people are unharmed by whatever happens, Many people I've seen are over 100 years old and still they are in their homes and nothing has ever happened to them. And others experience everything. For example, I myself can say I have seen all the different types of suffering that exist in this world, in this lifetime. For example, I have experienced the fears of water or drowning, or the fears of weapon, the fears of fire, the fears of the prison, the fears of the starvation, and so forth. Various different types of suffering that have ripened due to negative karma. And yet I was liberated from these difficulties. So due to negative actions, their result came to a ripening. However, due to some virtuous actions, the deity protected me. And for this reason, I really have great trust into the Dharma from the depths of my heart. And believe that if I share this advice with you, the disciples, that it will be of some benefit. And so, I am not a great scholar, a great master who knows how to speak eloquently, and maybe I cannot teach like a great scholar. I cannot teach any scriptures, really, and I'm just teaching from my own experience, what I have experienced from my own practice, unlike many other masters who speak very eloquently and they nice like poetic ways of saying, like we invite the deities and the nagas, and there's this prayer that Rinpoche said, that they speak very eloquently in this way. And so I personally don't know how to speak in this eloquent way, but I have experience in practice and I know suffering. I have experienced that and know how to overcome it. And especially for beginning practitioners, therefore, I feel that it will be of some benefit if you listen to these words of experience. Just maybe if you have great qualities, then maybe I have nothing higher to say.
다른 대리 이인배들이 다 단계 배우는 봐야 여기 싹벌들이 다 단계 가고 그러잖아. 시도 펜션, 로마 펜션, 그런 거 다 하고 참아더니 저는 이제 이 자리에 간 낭떠짓이 빠오던 가로 왔어. 몰라 다다 새끼가 가서 포탑지 길에서 못하게 뛰르고 공수 독요래. 얘는 사이다 만나서 사삼지 남이들이 다 그쪽까지 왕냐 마토 냥이 이제 제려면 가면မရှိ사든도 요와 사든지와 제도요나 사삼지 민보 강이 길에서 이제 뛰르고 많이 야, 늦지 때문에 되는 가시는 보고사 가고요. 가시는 보고사 가고요. 이래들 이제 루마니아 들이 서고가 뚜고 가서 포모니 유진 가서 빼다데 들자라 포모니 요래. 들지라 포모니 요래. 뭐가 가서 되니 샘직발로 샘이 포모 많은 민스. 샘파로 포모니 요 말에. 뭐가 가서 포모니 요 말에. 꼬다고 가서 대답이구나. 대양 주지 때문에 서로 반을 강조봐. 야, 지네들 이제 좀 많이 가능 나설라나? 함께 되는 되고요. 양지 뒤에서 우리 송내지 가래. 쏴찍히는 전에 삼십 몇. 대남들 생는 양서라는 이유로 볼라고 빼나? 다다. 쏴 양서는 등에는 팽거리 했어. 가리 팽거리 서 열대 등이지 랑그 레저 관계 지하서 레게 랑양 니바 누구요래 서번 누구요래 제 고도 맞아 봐야지 좀하고 저는 남들 생을 등이를 등에도 생기고 등에도 생기고 생기 전에 뒷감이란 게 살아 대바당 누구요 봐等于上来就是接着皇帝中医让多把强强小的告诉这个怕参加呢， 사도 찍고, 공화도 찍고, 강염을 등을 피고야 마사. 강염 마사, 사 찍고, 공화 찍고, 라공지, 등이 체가 참정을. 그 가리 피게 되네. 등이 양세 열대 뒤나 등이 샤유고 요르지. 등이 그 생기 체도 고요 말이야. 참타는 체도 고요. 참타는 양등이 용거리. 양등이 공로들이 등이지. 야, 로벌가라지. 제, 오죠, 로벌 좀 했죠. 로벌가, 등이도 나고, 대화도 등이 로벌을 안 주는데, 제가 이제 막 따발해서 하고, 등이는 지금 한 거야, 차를. 운이 뱅크래. 막 소리 남용이 오래요. 가나 딱 봐, 플라스틱 나서 왔다들 때니 같이 해요, 강에. 플라스틱 말해, 플라스틱 세면 샤드를 샤드, 떼와치고, 제야매가. 이마, 강에 가르치는 샤드, 랍사는 괜히 그래. 때 뒤에, 가르치는 좋은데, 제야더라. 또 상인 샤드를 샤드, 괜히들은, 샘들 샤드는 절대 이거래. 생파랑 매랑도 주는 때라 다리라도 사족생 짬도도 생기 고시 거래 때라 뛰는 슬라트 샘이 맞지나 사니신 보아고 말에 봐도 놓고 보아되는 때래 슬라트 샘 맞지나 슬라트를 있으면 받침도 오래 집어치 거래 슬라트 가면 찌어요 대답은 네 봐야 깨는 주고 요래 대답은 용할 때만 동 가리시고 그래 슬라트 유지도 시고 그래 슬라트 용기 가래 신배 이식해. 무슨 생각난데 차대요. 시합을 하면 sla가 맞췄어, 요 말이. 내식님 보지, sla가 생각 들어와요. 주문 들어온다고 해야지. 대개 생기게 레랑 박찬 치인이, 이 레랑 박찬이 좀 더 탑대. 제가 두개야 돼. 사바가 인기에 나디지 용기세. 제가 두개야 돼. sla가 제가 치고요. 그러지. 주습기 사지에 담지 제가. 찍듯이 말해야지. 자, 찍을 때서 이제 사지에 담지 제가 참고요. 제가 두개야 돼. 좁은 놈들이 대단기라고 생각나. 사지 상기제도 유래지나. 나디 박찬, 등에 남고, 등에도 남고, 실도 구요래. 땀물남다가 차로, 세열도 등에 유나야, 남들도 세면 등에 미와. 그래서 마법을 납용 그래. 오, 뭐, 야설 인다, 오, 나 세열도 등에도 유는 남들도 세는 무리면 없지. 팽에도 없지. 냠술, 무리 냠술 나고 대도 용이 그래. 내가 따다가 등에나 팽기요래. 바돌이야, 사태 이렇게 좁다고 그래. 사태 좁지나. 사태라고 세는 진식고 그래. 같이 인간은 터지기 오래, 나디도 봤다고 터지기 오래세. 요 시절에 매야 시절에 가시 터지기 요나 줄라도 지지는 술을 터지 봤다고 또 봤다고 보데 문제 레게 좀 요리 레게 좀나 지 레게 들어와요나 내가 땅 속을 말해 레게 들어와게 주 노바 따마도 따산이 기대로 주고 나지 그 하나 땅에 요서라 줄딱 터버리다 야 그때 가야만이 그 땅 가르치지 사람 공들이 주 나도 요 말봐 나도 면들이 바로 누가 말해 공사 열이요 말이야 매일 코토를 파라고 그러는 거래 코토 싸봐 교왕이 막에 줄 쳤다는 줄이 뒤로만 공대나 코토 싸망이 반대 코토를 파미로 줄라 용품이가 말이야 대다가 터다로 내가 담질라 팽기 거래 야 르나가 세고 등에나 팽기요 내 나타나야 팽기야 나타나야 가리 팽기요 딱 봐들이 라도 말이야 나타한테 세면 동네나 엠치도 그 나타면은 나타 독 내서 따라 나타도 요도 건 다보 롱터는 오래 센터는 오래 센터는 서로 롱터는 오래 롱터는 서로 차트를 보 나타는 나타 소리 오래 근데 나타 요도 건데 나타 오래 야 같이 나타 요다 나타지 잡을 인수고 거는 라고 사이에 나온 강의만 찍고 대홍장 곰지 매라기 있어 왜 패기 오래 사지 거는 나사지 징기 얼마 나사지 말이나 나사지 라지 무슨 짜다 심무 도로 나사지 파로 요리 요요 요리고 그거 도로 요라 기보자 요라 근데 세금 이들 파마로도 철지고 요리 있다고는 르프에 따라 됐다고 내 나타라야 패고 나가 등이나야 패고 요리 제 서만나야 패고 요리 니모바나야 패고 요리 잡고 총총을 잡아 자식 있을 거 요리 사세는 맞지나 대답을 해야지. 여기 자산시고 자원들 그 고라왕요래 그래 고라왕요를 고라대요 그 가르치는 그 약합되는 가르치 고라왕요라 어디는 이제 소소라다다 누구 미바도라 라왕데 겨우네 내가 제일 자산도 되는 구독 산책 생기 자산소 해서 편을 때리자 도당 산책 생기 자산 세군대로 통통아 네 호절미 라동 기둥이 왔다가 들이 자사 토야 요래 라동 자사 라 이도 죽고 로도스 있다가 빠들이 요거 요래 자사 이 요래
So another great quality of cultivating a pure view is also when we cultivate pure view towards each other, we eliminate the grasping towards each other. For example, between Vajra siblings or other disciples and friends. Ideally, from the perspective of Vajrayana, we perceive the outer universe as the celestial palace, and all the beings in this universe as Dakas and Dakinis. We can see all the sentient beings to be emanations of Tara and Chenrezig. If they are male, Chenrezig; if they are female, Tara. There are many different deities to be practiced. And even if you have not received an empowerment and you don't really know how to practice the creation stage practice, still maybe you want to have some deity practice, and there's still another way to practice the deity, through cultivating a pure view. The essence of all the different deities are Chenrezig and Tara. All the deities are contained in Chenrezig and Tara. And it is very beneficial if you're able to see everyone as Chenrezig or Tara. And when you engage in practice, Chenrezig and Tara is a deity that anyone can practice, even if you have not received the empowerment. And it depends on whatever deity you feel close to. Some people have different karmic connections and feel closer to a female and some closer to a male deity. So you can practice some Tara or Chenrezig. In the external form, when they appear as Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya forms, there is a duality of male and female, Tara and Chenrezig. On that level, there is a duality. There are male and female sentient beings, and there are male and female teachers who tame sentient beings. That is all from a conventional perspective. From an ultimate perspective, from the perspective of the nature of mind, there is no male and no female. Within the mind, there is no duality of male or female. This duality only exists on the conventional level. The deities appear in whichever form necessary in order to tame sentient beings. So whatever suits your mind, either Tara, Chenrezig, male or female, you can engage in this practice. All deities are contained within Tara or Chenrezig. Lord Jigten Sumgön said, if you accomplish a single deity, you accomplish the enlightened activities of all the deities. So if you only engage in a practice of a single deity, it is sufficient. It is also sufficient in order to overcome any kind of difficulties. Only the practice of a single deity. For example, you may have some external difficulty. The outer environment may be difficult. There may be a problem or suffering, and that is due to the karma created in past lifetimes, and we have no choice but to experience it. We all experience that, and we cannot turn away the result since the cause has already been created. But then there is also the inner grasping mind that grasps at this suffering, and therefore it suffers. And it is that mind that we can change, even if we cannot change the outer circumstance. We must transform the mind that grasps at suffering. And that also can be transformed through cultivating faith and devotion into a deity. So if you always think of that deity, it will be beneficial to overcome any kind of difficulty, suffering, negative thoughts, habitual patterns. Whenever they arise, you should stop it as it arises and think of the deity, recite the deity's mantra. Do not even think I am practicing the deity so that I can overcome that difficulty. You just think nothing at all. You don't think about your suffering. You just stop the thought of suffering and think of the deity only. So although there may be some external difficulty in the environment, if the mind does not grasp at it to be suffering, then whatever arises externally, it cannot keep your mind in bondage. Your mind will be free and will not be overcome by the difficulty and the suffering. The suffering that we experience also is just a temporary difficulty. The Buddha had said, beings are obscured by adventitious things, so it is temporary. Our problems, our suffering, our thoughts, happiness, suffering, all of these experiences are temporary. They are compounds and impermanent. And realizing that, you will be free of fear of any suffering. And so this is my personal experience. If you just pray to a single deity, the power is great. It is like praying to all the deities, because all the deities are really contained in one deity. They all are the same. And the essence of deity practice is to never forget about the deity. And if you habituate the deity and never forget about the deity, then at some point when you really experience a great difficulty, immediately you will be able to remember the deity and you will surrender to the deity and think, whatever happens, may it happen, I give my faith fully into the deity. And if you accomplish that, then after death, after you have died, your mind will become the deity only by thinking of the deity. Because the mind is like a mirror, and whatever you think, it will become. So in this lifetime, if we have habituated to taking refuge and cultivating bodhicitta and the creation of the deity, there is no other power that is needed actually at the time of death. That in itself is the Sambhogakaya power. If you just remember the Yidam deity, when you die, after you have died, your mind will merge non-dually with the deity, and you will be born in that deity's pure land. So such is the power of remembering the deity. And when you remember the deity, you must also remember the qualities of the deity. And so the qualities of the deity is first, the deity's omniscient wisdom. Wherever mind pervades, Buddha nature pervades. And wherever that pervades, the wisdom of the Buddhas pervades. And on that level of Buddha nature, we all are connected, like the beads on a mala string. We all are really one on this level. There is one pervasive mind. And then sentient beings, due to karma's experience various difficulties and habitual patterns that they have formed, and the deities know it all through their omniscient wisdom. And then the second quality that they have is the quality of compassionate love. They see with their wisdom all our suffering, and through their compassionate love, they apply a method to protect us through compassionate love. And all deities have that love. The love of all the Buddhas of the three times is contained within a single deity. All the Buddhas are contained within a single deity. And then the third power is the power of protection through loving kindness and compassion for all beings. They protect us. And so when we cultivate our faith and love to the deity, the deities will support us to eliminate our habitual patterns, transform our suffering, our negative thoughts and fixations. So we come to a point where we will remain inseparable from the deity at all times. Even we will have a dream about the deity. We never separate from the deity. And when we reach that point, even if we experience some external difficulty, the inner mind will not experience any suffering. Many of my disciples have actually told me that. Although I experience great outer difficulty, a great problem, still, when my mind does not grasp at that, I do not experience this as a difficulty. So if you really engage in practice, that is the result that you will experience. I have experienced that myself, and I found it very beneficial. It will protect you now in this lifetime whenever you encounter difficulties. It will also protect you later after you have died in the bardo. Through practicing the deity, all ordinary grasping will diminish. Sometimes people also have other thoughts. They think that people are trying to harm me, people are casting spells on me, and they think that. So it may or may not be possible, but in any case, whenever you think maybe somebody is casting a spell on you, if you think of the deity, that thought diminishes. There is no self. So first of all, we must understand karma. And so if there is a karmic connection from a past lifetime, then we will be harmed. If there is no karmic connection, then even if that other being tries to harm us, they cannot harm us. So let's assume there is a karmic connection and someone is trying to harm us. How is that person trying to harm us? With a self-grasping mind. And the karmic connection is rooted in the self-grasping mind. So only if, as long as we hold on to the self, the karmic connection exists and we can be harmed. However, if we let go of the self and there is no self, there is no one to be harmed. So if you think about the Yidam deity and you just don't think about what this other person will do to you, just think of the deity, then there is no self. And if there is no self, there is no one to be harmed. And if they try to cause harm, that harm will just fall back onto themselves. For example, if there's someone who wants to harm you, cast a spell on you, and you see yourself as Tara, that spell cannot reach you. It will fall back onto themselves. So also the deity practice is very beneficial for these kind of things, like negative forces, spells, and so forth. And also it is very beneficial for illness, for example. When you're sick, then your mind goes there, and we create a sickness around the sickness. And sometimes even we create a sickness where there is no sickness. For example, we go to a doctor, and the doctor tells you, you are sick. And maybe that's not true. Maybe he's wrong, and you're not sick. But because he told you that, you believe it, and you begin to think about it and to worry about it. And then your mind goes there. And wherever your mind goes, your winds will go. And if your winds go there, your blood will go there. And if your blood goes there, you create the sickness. So really you're creating your own sickness in this way. And even if you have a sickness, if you have an actual illness, there is again a method to overcome it through deity practice. An instruction that was given by Lord Thigden Sumgyen actually. And he said that when you have a sickness, you should visualize your Yidam deity, the size of an inch, in the nature of fire, at the particular place where you're sick. And just focus on that single-pointedly. And that really is very beneficial to help with sickness. Especially when you're sick, it is important not to think about the sickness. There is no benefit in thinking about it. Whatever arises, allow it to arise and do not grasp at it. Things exhaust themselves, just like hair or nails are growing. They exhaust themselves naturally. So do not grasp with your mind at the sickness. Then the deity practice can also benefit your sickness or any other kind of difficulty in this lifetime or in future lifetimes, or the afflictive emotions. And so we have said before, we have talked about the king that takes on the kingdom. When one takes on a kingdom, that means one gains independence, full control over one's own happiness. the king has power over the entire country, and has the power to create their own independence. And so in the same way, with the conventional bodhicitta, we receive the kingdom of being free from negative emotions when they arise. And when we achieve the kingdom of the ultimate bodhicitta, we see the nature of the mind, and that nature is unchanging. Once we have seen this nature and we abide within the unchanging ground, we naturally accomplish the dual purpose of others and self. For your own sake, you mount the royal seat of Dharmakaya, and for the sake of others, you display the two form emanations, the Rupa Kayas, that accomplish the welfare of sentient beings. So it is these two types of kingdom that we obtain.
Sarva Takpaya, Chukta Shuri. Majatimba, so Majatimba, Timba, Jetum Sati, my Yinsam, also so worthy. The reason is Raki Chigamari. Muni don't have a democracy, send the singing with the Flata, as you send the Flagi. Duty upon too much long it. Better than look dreaming. Look near, look down bottom so Thomas Hajis, directive. Nibadita, Sajil Jimpi long, so dancing charted, your money, Nibadi of the valley. Tata was Sancho said, Nibadi, left your dilemma, similar to some Hindu, the jail company, flat was same music charting, too much long dollars, father down Chepper Miba. Rasani, Rangarani is last. The universe would take you over young human but doctor. Did you charge them sent on in your solution there? Flooding Mussolini, it's in a decamita, Carisan was so. Oh, several son he did. Play, maybe, needed somebody. Get your money, tickle, all. Think it gave one man, is a longer, she take a party. On that with them, but me. Club but charge you know, don't you just only to Papa, your marry. Take you know, oh, Plan was a race on it. Here themselves of myself, they had to teach you. Tawari, the majority body. Clubs in the going to take him, but they have to go it. He took me and break the long time to you would give it one more. Say, let's go now. Each give it on the other bit.
So these were the first 2 points, the clarity and the recollection of purity. I gave a very brief introduction to that. And the third point is the divine pride of being the deity. And so normally then we are told, in that context, you must think, I actually am the deity. But then when we just think that I'm the deity, it's really sort of hard to really believe it. So we really must more understand what that means from an ultimate perspective. From an ultimate perspective, the mind of the deity and our own mind is exactly the same on the level of Buddha nature. We are connected like the beads on a mala string. Or for example, when you imagine two like electricity cables, and only when they meet then they light. And so one of these cables alone will not make the light. And so one of these cables is Buddha nature that we have. And on that level, we are the same as the Buddhas. And then the other cable, the other cord, is our intention. Either we give rise to self-grasping or an altruistic mind. If we give rise to an altruistic mind, then we have that second cable. Then the two cables connect and the light illuminates. And so in that way, we must understand when we cultivate bodhicitta, then we actually become the deity. From the perspective of Buddha nature, we already are connected to the deity. And if we give rise to bodhicitta, we actually become the deity. And then when we visualize the deity, again, we cannot always remain within this state. And again, afflictive emotions arise. So it is important to understand what really is the essence of the deity, more so than the visualization. The essence is the deity's mind, which is a union of emptiness and compassion. And if I give rise to utterly pure, undefiled love and compassion for just an instant, in that instant I am the actual deity. In that I must cultivate trust. So from an ultimate perspective, although there are hundreds and thousands of deities, there is not a single one who does not have the mind of emptiness and compassion. So within that union, they really are one. And if you cultivate this union, then you really are a deity. So it is not so important that you clearly visualize the deity. Whether your visualization is clear or not, it is most important that you accomplish the mind of the deity and cultivate that divine pride into the mind of the deity, the union of emptiness and compassion. So that point of deity practice is extremely important. And it seems to be an auspicious point to stop the teachings. So we stop here and dedicate the virtues.